Hello. Welcome. It's June 2nd. We're a day into Pride. A day and a half. More than a day and a half. Day and three quarters. At least where I'm at. Happy Pride! Remember, Pride started as a riot. Throwing bricks at cops. So, let's keep that in mind. It's so interesting seeing many people who claim to be allies get very offended when like queer people feel the need to be armed. um, there's a group called Armed Queers of Salt Lake City. They do a lot of really great work. They also are very connected to larger community organizing efforts. And it's especially at times where there are people that are like, oh, you're talking about, don't talk about drag queens that way. Like the liberal people who want to attend drag shows, but then won't acknowledge the need for self defense when the Proud Boys show up at these same drag shows armed and harassing people. And guess what? They stop doing it when the armed queers show up. Show up. When the armed queers show up. There we go. So it's not all mushed together. So that is a direct way to show the need and benefit for certain populations to have access to self-defense measures, where that is a very clear example of some of the same people who were like, oh, but you aren't protesting in the right way, and also still wanting to benefit from the art of queer people without engaging in the larger risk we take on just existing, especially as people have these intersections of marginalization, like with transness and race and ability or disability, where it really shows like the liberal fascist, the neoliberal fascist inclinations of certain people when they want to enjoy queer art without engaging in how Pride even began. We'll get into that because I'm really sick of this shit. Of people trying to claim the higher ground when they have so much, or higher ground, whatever that means, of respectability politics in a sense, of dictating how people resist when they are not the ones who are suffering the most from the conditions that we are all in. So, just putting out a rainbow flag does not mean that you're an ally, bitch. It's always nice to see rainbow flags. I think especially in these conservative strongholds, queer people who have the luxury of like being annoyed at seeing rainbow flags all the time, or like, ugh, that's such bad taste, which, it is. But also, that's a privilege. So just acknowledge that. If you are in a city, particularly a big city, that like that's just commonplace to see, like maybe sometimes don't blast that out on the internet all the time, because some of us who are in places where there's a lot of fascist double stuff, fascist extreme, I mean, it already is that, um, just in full swing, where we're in more chance of physical danger and brutalization from the systems and cops that are involved. Like sometimes it's nice to see a rainbow flag as a safe place, but also the same people who are having these rainbow flags outside, they better be willing to actually take on some risk to help the cause for queer liberation. Because if you just put out a rainbow flag, that doesn't mean you're necessarily a safe person or a safe space. And many people often think that just having a rainbow flag out is enough. It's not. Because sometimes, most times, we're at much more risk being queer. So, oh, hello, Seventh Vixen. Hi, whatever this is. I forgot if you had a name. Hello. I probably should do my intro. I was just like getting caught up in the pride spiel of it all. But yes, I'm Aubri. Nice to see you. Welcome, welcome. It's another day, another stream in fascist America. Welcome to whatever this is. An attempt at providing education, advocacy, and a little common sense in this digital wasteland. I'm Aubri Devashrayee. There's the name. There you go. So it's Pride, and I'm just giving a reminder about the nuances of Pride. How, this performative allyship of just having rainbows around, saying like, oh, I like queer people, but then also getting mad at queer people when there are very real risks to being queer, especially as, fascism is increasing with all of their tactics, especially when it comes to targeting people, especially when people are experiencing these intersections of marginalization, especially queer people of color who are disabled, and how like all of these intersections of marginalization just increase your risk of violence just existing, and how some of the same people who want to claim that they're allies somehow get offended when like queer people have to take certain steps to protect themselves sometimes. Like I gave the example of like not too long ago, the Proud Boys, they're a white power group in the US. Are they in other places? I don't know. I should maybe look into that. But a little bit ago, they were outside of a drag show, and they were protesting, and of course they were armed and harassing people, where people are much more likely to be on the receiving end of their violence. And the drag queens there, the people who were managing the event, called in a group called the Armed Queers of Salt Lake City, and guess what? The Proud Boys went away because they actually were afraid. And sometimes that's what it takes. And the same people who want to be like, happy Pride, and like make money off of selling Pride things, but not acknowledge that like Pride started as a riot and throwing bricks at pigs at the cops, that it's a lot of privilege to be like, oh, you shouldn't protest in that way. It's like, okay, well, are you currently experiencing these conditions? No? Then how about shut the fuck up? That's my take. It's not Pride Day, Google says, but I'm pretty sure you can say whatever day is whatever. I mean, it's Pride Month, in the US at least, in June. It's a whole month, but also I think it just largely has been co-opted by corporate capitalist interests. And we've seen, especially in this extra fascist moment, a lot of these corporations be like, oh, we actually aren't celebrating Pride, or they back out of Pride parades where they were able to benefit from queer dollars, but now when they are viewing it as more of a drawback with this overtly fascist administration, that, their allyship is very flimsy. So, that's very common to not actually have corporations be reliable allies. We should never look to them as allies, like true allies, because what that means is like people actually have to take on a modicum of risk and not just opportunistically use us for their capitalist interests. But I'm mostly talking about the individuals who, especially liberals, that want to say like, oh, like happy Pride, I'm gonna go to a Pride event, I'm gonna go to a gay bar with all my straight friends and take up space, but then also get mad if queer people resist in ways that I don't like. That's like, you don't have any room to say anything if you are not currently experiencing these conditions. So that's my take. Okay, it's like my usual streamer saying it's her birthday. Kinda. That's kind of how it is. But like we have seen with like many movements that have happened, it's been co-opted by these corporate interests, largely to kind of deflect from the revolutionary resistance that it started out as like actually throwing bricks at cops. And we need to bring back some of that energy, because there's been a lot of, especially these like organizing groups that are like popping up everywhere, that people are like, oh, like, please don't bring this to a protest, don't bring this. And it's like, you do realize that like some of those things you were saying to not engage in is some of the only ways people actually have self-defense in a lot of situations. So especially living in the good old US of A, where like there are even more white power groups and Nazis just like out and about constantly threatening people. It's like, well, we need to show that like we aren't easily cowed and that they can't intimidate us. So sometimes they only respond to certain kinds of visual resistance. I'll just say it that way. Happy Pride Month! Happy Pride Month, Tan! Yay! Ooh. I have to be careful when I do this. Like, as I've been like editing videos, when I use this, I'm like, oh, this like blows out the mic. So, whoops. Today I went outside. Oh, it was a feat. That's how I feel a lot. I talked with some local politician kind of friend, one that thinks that Trump on his first term was okay, but he also thinks it's completely insane right now. Yeah, I mean, to not recognize how like the first Trump administration led to this is a bit naive, but also it's naive not to acknowledge how like the larger American political system being very fascist leaning to begin with is how we got to this place. So we'll acknowledge that as well. Hello, Coz. Happy Pride. I also have this shirt that I got. Trans people just want to exist, which many people are like, I hate that. And I'm like, okay, how about I'll be a walking billboard for you to be mad at then? Give you a reason to be mad. So I think that is important, I guess, because it will eventually touch his pouch. Like his wallet. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, since the US is an empire, it unfortunately affects a lot of the globe. But, I mean, we are in falling empire. This is falling empire shit. So we'll acknowledge that as well. How are you doing, Coz? Welcome. Okay, so I was going to start off with reading the Scarlet Pimpernel because it's the last chapter and I just want to be done with it. It's so fucking annoying to me. And I originally was like, this is a great exercise to deconstruct this like fascist aristocratic propaganda, but it's so annoying that I'm like, I don't think I can do this again. I don't think I can put myself through that. So after this, we're doing a major palate cleanser, and for literature story time, we're going to be reading the Communist Manifesto. And since I'm probably on like many watch lists or whatever the fuck, I figure, might as well actually do something that hopefully is educational. So there we go. That's my mindset. In the spirit of pride, that's what pride is to me. How we educate, protect our own, organize, resist all the bullshit. So I'm reading it at the beginning because I just want to get it over with. I think I also have like had a mental block around it where I'm like, oh, I guess we don't have time today because it's so annoying to read. I'm like, I need to just lock in and get it over with so we can move on. The guy paid all my beers, so I will not complain. Sadly, he's right. My powerful, mind-changing arguments only work on neutral people. Yeah, exactly. It's like, that's part of, building community organizing is like, okay, do you actually have area that you can have a meeting of minds? Because if not, then like it's beneficial to be like, okay, we'll move on. We'll go our separate ways. And like, that's a good thing to understand who you can work with or not. Some people are not willing to have their minds be changed at all. And it's good to save our time and energy for the conversations that we possibly can. But yeah, this is where we're at. Fascist America being fascist America in decline and wanting to like tear down the world with it, which is how we know it's fascism, late stage capitalism, if you will. But I mean, it's great that you were able to get out and about today. All right. Shall we finish this bullshit now that I have my reading gloves on? So, where we left off with the Scarlet Pimpernel, and then after we read this, I did want to get into like the main stuff that I normally go over on Tuesdays, which is going over news I wasn't able to cover on Monday, and particularly local news as it is happening. So we'll get to that after. So this is chapter 31 of The Scarlet Pimpernel. In the previous chapter, we saw how it took me forever to get through it because it was just so annoying and I kept interrupting with my disdain. But they're still trying to catch the Scarlet Pimpernel. They finally know that it is Sir Percy. They kind of guessed to begin with, but especially with Marguerite being like, Sir Percy, my husband, the Scarlet Pimpernel, please run away. You are warned. It's like, okay. So even if they had doubts before, bitch, now they know. Good job. And now she's like, I have to protect him. And she's not really doing much. So, I mean, if she was doing too much, then it really wouldn't be aristocratic propaganda. That was deeply gendered and misogynistic. So there's that. Now Marguerite is planning or attempting to plan on trying to help, whatever that means for her. And this is the climax of the story. So this is Chapter 31, The Escape. Marguerite listened, half dazed as she was, to the fast-retreating, firm footsteps of the four men. All nature was so still that she, lying with her ear close to the ground, could distinctly trace the sound of their tread as they ultimately turned into the road, and presently the faint echo of the old cart wheels, the halting gait of the lean nag, told her that her enemy was a quarter of a league away. How long she lay there she knew not. She had lost count of time. Dreamily, she looked up at the moonlit sky and listened to the monotonous roll of the waves. The invigorating scent of the sea was nectar to her wearied body. The immensity of the lonely cliffs was silent and dreamlike. Her brain only remained conscious of its ceaseless, its intolerable torture of uncertainty. She did not know. Her talking about torture is really rich at this moment. After this person was just beaten nearby, who they are not even bothering to refer to as a human being with a name. They just keep referring to him as the Jew. So that's anti-Semitic, to be clear, to only be speaking about people with racialized language that doesn't honor their humanity. That's discrimination. Surprise, surprise. But we need to call these things out. And her to be like, oh, but I'm in mental agony, while this poor man was being beaten right next to her. It's like, I don't think you have room to talk about torture, bitch. So she did not know. She did not know whether Percy was even now, at this moment, in the hands of the soldiers of the Republic, enduring, as she had done herself, the jibes and jeers of his malicious enemy. Oh, because that is the worst thing you could ever experience. As an upper-class lady, recently upper-class. She did not know, on the other hand, whether Armand's lifeless body did not lie there in the hut, whilst Percy had escaped. That's Armand is her brother. Only to hear that his wife's hands had guided the human bloodhounds to the murder of Armand and his friends. The physical pain of utter weariness was so great that she hoped confidently her tired body could rest here forever, after all the turmoil, the passion, and the intrigues of the last few days, because this over the last few days was just so horrible and tiresome, not acknowledging that the circumstances that the revolutionaries and working class had been subjected to were far worse, which led them to actually pursue revolutionary tactics. Hello. Here, beneath that clear sky, within the sound of the sea, and with this balmy autumn breeze whispering to her a last lullaby, all was so solitary, so silent, like unto dreamland. What? Unto dreamland? That was like an attempt at being profound, but just sounded dumb to me. If you think I'm being overly critical of this, I don't care, because I think it doesn't. Even the last faint echo of the distant cart had long ago died away, afar. Suddenly, a sound, the strangest, undoubtedly, that these lonely cliffs of France had ever heard, broke the silent solemnity of the shore. So strange a sound was it that the gentle breeze ceased to murmur, the tiny pebbles to roll down the steep incline. So strange that Marguerite, wearied, overwrought as she was, thought that the beneficial unconsciousness of the approach of death was playing her half-sleeping senses a weird and elusive trick. What? Unconsciousness of the approach of death? What would she even be dying from? That's what I want to know. They clearly have not shown any indication that they're going to hurt her or kill her, so... It was the sound of a good, solid, absolutely British damn. Okay. Is that exclusive to just British people? The seagulls in their nests awoke and looked round in astonishment. A distant and solitary owl set up a midnight hoot. The tall cliffs frowned down majestically at the strange, unheard-of sacrilege. Oh. Marguerite did not trust her ears. Half raising herself on her hands, she strained every sense to see or hear, to know the meaning of this very earthly sound. All was still again for the space of a few seconds. The same silence once more fell upon the great and lonely vastness. Then Marguerite, who had listened as in a trance, who felt she must be dreaming with that cool, magnetic moonlight overhead, heard again, and this time her heart stood still, her eyes large and dilated, looked round her, not daring to trust to her other sense. Her other sense? Meaning her hearing? I don't even know what that means. I don't even think the author, Baroness Orsi, knows what that means.
Odds alive, but I wish those demmed fellows had not hit quite so hard.
This time, it was quite unmistakable. Only one particular pair of essentially British lips could have uttered those words in sleepy, drawly, affected tones.
Damn,
repeated those same British lips emphatically.
Zounds, but I'm as weak as a rat.
In a moment, Marguerite was on her feet. Was she dreaming? Were those great stony cliffs the gates of paradise? Was the fragrant breath of the breeze suddenly caused by this flutter of angels' wings, bringing tidings of unearthly joys to her after all her suffering? Or faint and ill was she the prey of delirium? She listened again, and once again she heard the same very earthly sounds of good, honest British language. Okay. This is some colonizer shit. And also, she is such a class traitor, where she's just like, oh, the French revolutionaries that I actually have more in common with when I was growing up than just recently over the past year being married to a titled person. It's like, okay, interesting. Not the least akin to whisperings from paradise or flutter of angels' wings. She looked round eagerly at the tall cliffs, the lonely hut, the great stretch of rocky beach. Somewhere there, above or below her, behind a boulder or inside a crevice, but still hidden from her longing, feverish eyes, must be the owner of that voice, which once used to irritate her, but now would make her the happiest woman in Europe, if only she could locate it, because she only recently was like, oh, I like my husband now that I found out he was the Scarlet Pimpernel. Now that I found out that, like, he was cool to upper class society. Percy! Percy! She shrieked hysterically, tortured between doubt and hope. I am here! Come to me! Where are you? Percy! Percy!
It's all very well calling me, my dear.
Okay. The dialogue is like so belabored in this book. Said the same sleepy, drawly voice.
But odds life, I cannot come to you. Those demmed frog-eaters have trussed me like a goose on a spit, and I am as weak as a mouse. I cannot get away.
And still Marguerite did not understand. She did not realize for at least another 10 seconds whence came that voice, so drawly, so dear, but alas, with a strange accent of weakness and of suffering. There was no one within sight, except by that rock. Great God, the Jew. Was she mad or dreaming? So, once again, anti-Semitism, very clear. Where Percy, they are using these anti-Semitic tropes of saying that people, and this is like a very consistent one that has been used throughout time of like, oh, of Jewish people being subservient, and like this idea of like crouching and shuffling along, like this trope that is used to have him be a disguise, to say like, oh, because he was giving in to people's prejudices and effectively acting like a Jewish person, whatever that means, that he was able to disguise his height. Wow, so clever. Not discriminatory whatsoever. And all to save the aristocrats. Okay. His back was against the pale moonlight. He was half crouching, trying vainly to raise himself with his arms tightly pinioned. Marguerite ran up to him, took his head in both her hands, and looked straight into a pair of blue eyes.
Oh, what a relief, looking into blue eyes.
Good-natured, even a trifle amused, shining out of the weird and distorted mask of the Jew. See, this is just gross. And also, it's just embarrassing to even read. Percy! Percy, my husband! She gasped, faint with the fullness of her joy. Thank God! Thank God! And again, she didn't care that another human being was suffering when she perceived this person to be Jewish, rather than understanding that it was her husband dressed as a Jewish person and was engaging in like very anti-Semitic tropes, that now that she finds out that it is her husband that she only recently adopted more affection for, that she's like,
oh, what have they done to you?
Not caring that like another human being was suffering.
La, my dear, he rejoined good-humoredly, we will both do that anon. And think you can loosen these demmed ropes and release me from my inelegant attitude?
Inelegant. She had no knife. Her fingers were numb and weak.
Oh, because she's a woman. She's so weak.
But she's also had like regular meals. She like ate just not too long ago. So it's not like she's starving like the revolutionaries are. But she worked away with her teeth, while great welcome tears poured from her eyes onto those poor pinioned hands. Sounds like a wimp. This is what we call upper class fragility. Hello, Turd Bomb. Welcome.
Odds life,
he said, when at last, after frantic efforts on her part, the rope seemed at last to be giving way.
But I marvel whether it has ever happened before that an English gentleman allowed himself to be licked by a demmed foreigner, and made no attempt to give as good as he got.
Oh, because that means that English gentlemen have a lot of courage and strength somehow to not be in these situations, when really it's just privilege. Happy Pride! Happy Pride! Ooh! Whoops. I'm just like hitting things over here. Also, how was the concert that you went to? It looked very fun. It was very obvious that he was exhausted from sheer physical pain when at last the rope gave away. He fell in a heap against the rock. Marguerite looked helplessly round her.
Oh, for a drop of water on this awful beach,
she cried in agony, saying that he was ready to faint.
Nay, my dear, he murmured with his good-humored smile. Personally, I should prefer a drop of good French brandy. As you'll dive in the pocket of this dirty old garment, you'll find my flask. Oh my god. So he's like, in order to look like I'm Jewish, I have to have a dirty garment on. Which again is playing into the very fascistic tropes of, and using the word fascist. Fascist came about, in like fascist Italy, where the term comes from, but the sentiments of fascism have existed long before that, especially in colonization. You'll find my flask. I'm damned if I can move.
When he had drunk some brandy, he forced Marguerite to do likewise.
La, that's better now, eh, little woman?
He said with a sigh of satisfaction.
Hey-ho, but this is a queer rig-up.
Well, same. Queer, you say?
For Sir Percy Blakeney, to be found in by his lady, and no mistake. Begad, he added, passing his hand over his chin. I haven't been shaved for nearly 20 hours. I must look a disgusting object. As for these curls,
oh my god. Getting into more anti-Semitic tropes. And laughingly, he took off the disfiguring wig and curls, and stretched out his long limbs, which were cramped from many hours stooping. See, again, playing into the anti-Semitic tropes of like, oh, he was so good at disguising himself because he was so bigoted. Like, okay, how is that helpful in any way? Dude, it was so fun. Red Rocks. I've never been there, but that sounds really fun. Is it, For some reason, I was thinking that Red Rock was the same as Red Butte Gardens, but I don't think that's the same thing. Is that in Colorado? I should probably know this. Hello, Linton. Welcome, welcome. We're finishing up this slop so that we can get it over with. It just is so, ugh, yuck. I haven't shaved for way longer than 20 hours. I know. So they're like, oh, you need to have endless pity for the aristocrats. And once we find out that the person who was assumed to be Jewish is an aristocrat, there's endless amount of sympathy when there was none to be had before. So, like, you're just showing your hand at how prejudiced you are, Baroness.
I wonder if you have a vested interest in being on the side of aristocrats and portraying them in a sympathetic light.
Yes, Morrison, Colorado, to be exact. Okay. Yeah, I knew that Red Butte Gardens is in Salt Lake City, but I didn't know if it was like what they call that specific venue. Because there's like the gardens in general, you know, like that you can walk around and stuff. I wasn't sure if like Red Rock was what they call like the outdoor event place. But yeah, that's a long drive. Okay. How are you doing, Linton? Let's see. Then he bent forward and looked long and searchingly into his wife's blue eyes.
Oh, the blue-eyed couple. So pure, so white. Wow, we must feel extra bad for them because they are so white and experiencing these circumstances.
Percy, she whispered with a deep blush suffused. Oh, nope. While a deep blush suffused her delicate cheeks and neck.
If you only knew. I do know, dear.
Everything, he said with infinite gentleness.
And can you ever forgive? I have not to forgive, sweetheart. Your heroism.
She didn't do anything. Okay? She didn't do anything. See, I think they're both parks with amphitheaters. Okay, that's probably what I'm conflating. Doing good. How's your day been? In all caps, too. Doing extra good? Glad to hear it. Been doing all right. Just trying to. I was earlier venting out my feelings of, you know, like performative allyship. You don't have to say oops. Just normally that's not how you chat. So I'm like, wow. And if you want to be chatting that way, not like it has to be a pattern, great. Love it. Left on. Yeah, I will get to some of the feelings I have about like performative allyship, where there are people that are like happy pride but don't want to recognize that it's about like its origins are throwing bricks at cops when they're like
you can't do that,
with like types of resistance of queer people. It's like, you do realize that the whole situation of you saying happy pride came from the situation of throwing bricks at cops. Hello? Anyway. Left it on. You're good. No judgment. If that's how you want to express yourself ever.
Your heroism, your devotion, which I, alas, so little deserved, have more than atoned for that unfortunate episode at the ball.
What? They are so weird together. I guess maybe they deserve each other then.
Then you knew?
She whispered.
All that time? Yes, he replied tenderly. I knew. All the time.
This dialogue's so bad. They just keep repeating the same things over and over again.
But, begad, had I but known what a noble heart yours was, my Margot.
Noble, as in being, noble. Like, actually having a noble title.
But what about straight pride?
I know. It's like, oh, you mean, all 11 months of the year, which also, in many aspects, 12 months of the year, with how many straights that are at Pride, but, like, want to dictate how people can show pride or resistance.
I should have trusted you, as you deserved to be trusted.
She didn't show that she could be trusted. She betrayed him, essentially. I mean, I was for that because it was, like, on the side of the revolutionaries, but okay.
And you would not have had to undergo the terrible sufferings of the past few hours.
Yeah, as opposed to being in the working class, which is, like, years of suffering. July through May is straight pride. Yeah, exactly.
In order to run after a husband who has done so much that needs forgiveness.
They were sitting side by side, leaning up against a rock, and he had rested his aching head on her shoulder. She certainly now deserved the name of the happiest woman in Europe. Ah, yes, because women by the sides of their husband, sacrificing everything for them, not actually doing anything of substance, because that would be too masculine. That is what patriarchy requires of you, madam.
It is a case of the blind leading the lame, sweetheart, is it not?
Okay, that's ableist, he said with his good-natured smile of old.
Odds life, but I do not know which are the more sore, my shoulders or your little feet.
Oh, because her feet are so little and petite. He bent forward to kiss them, for they peeped out through her torn stockings.
Oh no!
And bore pathetic witness to endurance and devotion. Wow. Feels like when an influencer or celebrities try to write a book with no forethought. Pretty much what it is. Exactly. I don't know anything about this situation. I'm not going to do research, but I am an authority. Like, okay. My last 2 messages were checked by Automod. I know. This is why it's like, AI, because that is like a form of AI, to be like not having nuance. This is why you need like humans in charge of things, and why I'm like, okay, this is allowable. I understand tone. But Armand, she said with sudden terror and remorse. Oh, so now she, like, her brother could be dead. She's just now remembering him. She's like completely forgotten about him this whole time, to be honest. As in the midst of her happiness, the image of her beloved brother, for whose sake she had so deeply sinned, rose now before her mind.
Oh, have no fear for Armand, sweetheart,
because when you are a good woman living in patriarchy, you must obey your husband first, before any other man, but men before women, and certainly men before yourself, if you are a woman.
Oh, have no fear for Armand, sweetheart, he said tenderly.
Did I not pledge to you my word that he should be safe?
He with de Tournay and the others are even now on board the Daydream, his personal yacht.
Ew.
But how? She gasped. I do not understand. Yet 'tis simple enough, my dear, he said with that
funny, half shy, half inane laugh of his.
You see, when I found that brute Chauvelin meant to stick to me like a leech, I thought the best thing I could do, as I could not shake him off, was to take him along with me. I had to get to Armand and the others somehow, and all the roads were patrolled, and everyone on the lookout for your humble servant. I knew that when I slipped through Chauvelin's fingers at the Chat Gris, that he would lie in wait for me here, whichever way I took. I wanted to keep an eye on him and his doings, and a British head is as good as a French one any day.
Okay.
Indeed, it had proved to be infinitely better, and Marguerite's heart was filled with joy and marvel as he continued to recount to her the daring manner in which he had snatched the fugitives away right under Chauvelin's very nose.
Dressed as the dirty old Jew. Oh my god. See, this is anti-Semitism. This is like old-fashioned anti-Semitism. And how he's like, oh, look how clever I am. Like, ew, shut the fuck up. He said gaily, I mean, same. He obviously is not meaning it in that way. Not in the pride way.
I knew I should not be recognized, because why would anyone expect a white English gentleman, white in the very racialized sense of constantly moving goalposts to justify political oppression? I had met Reuben Goldstein in Calais earlier in the evening.
Again, the, like, just general name of, like, this, very, like, using generalized names, like how we were discussing yesterday, Linton, of, like, the, like, the J.K. Rowling treatment of, like, I'm going to just, like, pick whatever I think sounds like someone who is Jewish. Like, okay, this is so problematic.
I had met Reuben Goldstein in Calais earlier in the evening. For a few gold pieces, he supplied me with this rig-out, and undertook to bury himself out of sight.
Bury himself? What does that mean? That's concerning. I'm very worried about him.
Whilst he lent me his cart and nag. But if Chauvelin had discovered you, she gasped excitedly. Your disguise was good. He is so sharp. Oh, you. Oh, I'm so impressed with your prejudice. It is so effective. Ah! Odds fish, he rejoined quietly. Then certainly the game would have been up. I could but take the risk. I know human nature pretty well by now.
I mean, I guess you could say that.
With a note of sadness in his cheery young voice. And I know these Frenchmen out and out. They so loathe a Jew that they never come nearer than a couple yards of him.
Okay, and what does that mean about you? Like, what does that mean about you and your class who are imposing these conditions on people who are Jewish? Hello? You think that they want to be around people who are Jewish even more than the revolutionaries, when there were many revolutionaries who were Jewish? Excuse me. Anyway. This is why I always put off reading this shit. I don't know why I put my and all of you through this.
And begad, I fancy that I contrive to make myself look about as loathsome an object as it is possible to conceive.
So him trying to say in one breath, like,
oh, they're so bigoted, but do you see how effective I am at making myself look so prejudiced?
Like, what is going on here? You are just, like, showing your hand at how, like, bigoted you actually are.
Yes. And then, she asked eagerly, why, yes, you were effective at playing on everyone's discriminatory impulses. Zooks. Then I carried out my little plan, that is to say. At first, I only determined to leave everything to chance. But when I heard Chauvelin giving his orders to the soldiers, I thought that fate and I were going to work together after all. I reckoned on the blind obedience of the soldiers. Chauvelin had ordered them on pain of death not to stir until the tall Englishman came. Degas had thrown me down in quite a heap close to the hut. The soldiers took no notice of the Jew, who had driven Citoyen Chauvelin to this spot. I managed to free my hands from the ropes, with which the brute had trussed me. I always carried pencil and paper with me wherever I go. Oh, because he's a gentleman. He's so educated and upper class. Then I looked about. Oh, wait, I skipped a line. And I hastily scrawled a few important instructions on a scrap of paper.
Also, Linton, this is my impression of an English aristocrat, so this is probably offensive. Sorry. But also, with it being this, like, class differential, I'm not as sympathetic. Maybe I should be.
Then I looked about me. I crawled up into the hut under the very noses of the soldiers, who lay under cover without stirring, just as Chauvelin had ordered them to do. Then I dropped my little note into the hut through a chink in the wall and waited. In this note, I told the fugitives to walk noiselessly out of the hut, creep down the cliffs, keep to the left until they came to the first creek, to give a certain signal when the boat of the Daydream, which lay in wait not far out to sea, would pick them up. They obeyed implicitly, fortunately for them and for me. The soldiers who saw them were equally obedient to Chauvelin's orders. They did not stir. I waited for nearly half an hour. When I knew that the fugitives were safe, I gave the signal which caused so much stir.
It's practically a different language. I mean, that's what I figure. Especially with what you have said about, like, your political viewpoints. I'm like, yeah, it's an indication of how out of touch these people are. And that was the whole story. Oh, okay. Can we be done now? It seemed so simple, and Marguerite could but marvel at the wonderful ingenuity, the boundless pluck and audacity which had evolved and helped to carry out this daring plan. But those brutes struck you, she gasped in horror at the bare recollection of the fearful indignity. Oh, so it wasn't viewed as such before, when she was viewing him as someone who was Jewish. Excuse me.
Well, that could not be helped, he said gently. Whilst my little wife's fate was so uncertain, I had to remain here by her side. Odds life, he added merrily. Never fear. Chauvelin will lose nothing by waiting, I warrant. Wait till I get him back to England. La! He shall pay for the thrashing he gave me with compound interest, I promise you.
Marguerite laughed. It was so good to be beside him, to hear his cheery voice, to watch that good-natured twinkle in his blue eyes. Again, blue eyes. As he stretched out his strong arms and longing for that foe in anticipation of his well-deserved punishment. Suddenly, however, she started. The happy blush left her cheek. The light of joy died out of her eyes. She had heard a stealthy footfall overhead, and a stone had rolled down from the top of the cliffs, right down to the beach. "What's that?" she whispered in horror and alarm.
Oh, nothing, my dear, he muttered with a pleasant laugh. Only a trifle you happen to have forgotten. My friend, Folk.
Sir Andrew! She gasped. Indeed, she had wholly forgotten the devoted friend and companion. Oh, the cleverest woman in Europe seems to be like the last to figure out everything, it seems. She had wholly forgotten that devoted friend and companion, who had trusted and stood by her during all these hours of anxiety and suffering. She remembered him now, tardily, and with a pang of remorse.
"Aye, you had forgotten him, hadn't you, my dear?" said Sir Percy merrily. "Fortunately, I met him not far from the Chagris, before I had the interesting supper party with my friend Chauvelin. Odds life, but I have but a score to settle with that young reprobate. But in the meanwhile, I told him of a very long, very roundabout road that would bring him here by a very circuitous road, which Chauvelin's men would never suspect, just about the time when we are ready for him, little woman?"
Just calling him little. You can hear how witty they think they are. I know, exactly. Like, also, I'm, like, playing it up. Yeah, they just are, like, not... It's all... Like, even when I read this for the first time, I was like 13. Actually, the last time and only other time I have read this, I was like, how did she not figure out that he was the Scarlet Pimpernel? That's really easy. What's going on?
And he obeyed? Asked Marguerite in utter astonishment. Without word or question. See, here he comes. He was not in the way when I did not want him, and now he arrives in the nick of time. Ah, he will make pretty little Suzanne a most admirable and methodical husband.
Methodical? What? Is that a qualification of being a good husband? I guess it can be, but what a weird thing to say.
In the meanwhile, Sir Andrew Ffoulke had cautiously worked his way down the cliffs. He stopped once or twice, pausing to listen for the whispered words which would guide him to Blakeney's hiding place.
Blakeney, he ventured he ventured to say at last, cautiously. Blakeney, are you there?
The next moment, he rounded the rock against which Sir Percy and Marguerite were leaning, and seeing the weird figure still clad in the Jew's long gabardine, again, not even saying, like, a Jewish person, just all of the generalizing is so old and obviously discriminatory. He paused in sudden, complete bewilderment, but already Blakeney had struggled to his feet.
Here I am, friend,
he said with his funny, inane laugh.
All alive, though I do look a begad scarecrow in these demmed things.
Oh my god. Again, the dehumanizing language.
Zooks,
ejaculated Sir Andrew in boundless astonishment as he recognized his leader.
Of all the...
Which, that word, ejaculated, used to be used more commonly referring to people like exclaiming something. Just to put that out there. The young man had seen Marguerite, and happily checked the forcible language that rose to his lips at sight of the exquisite Sir Percy in this weird and dirty garb. See, it's so heavy-handed. It's not even, like, discrimination in passing. It is just, like, just putting it in over and over and over again, where it's like, you're trying to claim that the revolutionaries are more discriminatory than you, who is writing this book and describing people in these terms?
Yes, said Blakeney calmly. Of all the... my friend, I have not yet had time to ask you what you were doing in France when I ordered you to remain in London. Insubordination? What? Wait till my shoulders are less sore, and by gad, see the punishment you'll get. Odds fish, I'll bear it, said Sir Andrew with a merry laugh.
Ah, because that's what you do with these hierarchies. You willingly submit to whatever your leader wants, no matter how absurd. Said Sir Andrew with a merry laugh.
Saying that you are alive to give it, would you have had me allow Lady Blakeney to do the journey alone? But in the name of heaven, man, where did you get these extraordinary clothes? Lord, they are a bit quaint, ain't they?
Oh my god. The classist prejudice that is so racialized is just extraordinarily gross. Laughed Sir Percy jovially.
But odds fish, he added with sudden earnestness and authority. Now you are here, folk. We must lose no more time. That brute Chauvelin may send someone to look after us.
Marguerite was so happy that she could have stayed here forever, hearing his voice, asking 100 questions. But at mention of Chauvelin's name, she started in quick alarm, afraid for the dear life she would have died to save.
But how can we get back? She gasped. The roads are full of soldiers between here and Calais, and... We're not going back to Calais, sweetheart, he said, but just the other side of Grenay, not half a league from here. The boat of the Daydream will meet us there.
The boat of the Daydream?
Yes, he said with a merry laugh.
Another little trick of mine. I should have told you before that when I slipped that note into the hut. I also added another for Armand, which I directed to leave behind, and which has sent Chauvelin and his men running full tilt back to the Chat Gris after me. But the little first note contained my real instructions, including those to old Briggs. That's like his skipper, the commander of his yacht. He had my orders to go out further to sea, and then towards the west. When well out of sight of Calais, he will send the galley to a little creek he and I know of just beyond Gris. The men will look out for me. We have a preconcerted signal, and we will all be safely aboard, while Chauvelin and his men solemnly sit and watch the creek, which is just opposite the Chat Gris. The other side of Gris, but I cannot walk, Percy, she moaned helplessly, as trying to struggle Okay, this is just written weirdly. Helplessly as, trying to struggle to her tired feet, she found herself unable to even stand. Oh, the horror. I will carry you, my dear, he said simply. The blind leading the lame, you know. Sir Andrew was ready, too, to help with the precious burden. The precious burden? Meaning Marguerite. If that is not, like, such a, like, patriarchal way of viewing women. The precious burden. Oh, you are so delicate. Oh, you are lovely, but you are also such a burden, milady. But Sir Percy would not entrust his beloved to any arms but his own. When you and she are both safely on board the Daydream, he said to his... Oh, wait. This is still Percy. When you and she are both safely on board the Daydream, he said to his young comrade. Not comrade. You don't know what that means. I feel that Mademoiselle Suzanne's eyes will not greet... What? The clues as to who is speaking is not very clear. Will not greet me in England. Oh, okay. So he's like, I don't want Suzanne to be upset with me and you, that you are carrying my wife. Will not greet me in England with reproachful looks, then it will be my turn to rest. And his arms, still vigorous in spite of fatigue and suffering, closed round Marguerite's poor, weary body, and lifted her as gently as if she had been a feather. Then, as Sir Andrew discreetly kept out of earshot, there were many things said, or rather whispered, which even the autumn breeze did not catch, for it had gone to rest. All his fatigue was forgotten. His shoulders must have been very sore, for the soldiers had hit hard. But the man's muscles seemed made of steel, and his energy was almost supernatural. It was a weary tramp, half a league along the stony side of the cliffs, but never for a moment did his courage give way or his muscles yield to fatigue. On he tramped, with firm footstep, his vigorous arms encircling the precious burden. That again. And no doubt, as she lay quiet and happy, at times lulled to momentary drowsiness, at others watching, through the slowly gathering morning light, the pleasant face with the lazy, drooping blue eyes, ever cheerful, ever illumined, with a good-humored smile, she whispered many things which helped to shorten the weary road, and acted as a soothing balsam to his aching sinews. The many-hued light of dawn was breaking in the east, when at last they reached the creek beyond Gris. The galley lay in wait. In answer to a signal from Sir Percy, she drew near, and 2 sturdy British sailors had the honor of carrying my lady into the boat. The honor! Oh, wow.
Half an hour later, they were on board the Daydream. The crew, who of necessity were in their master's secrets, and who were devoted to him heart and soul, like any good servant should be, were not surprised to see him arriving in so extraordinary a disguise. So again, like, talking about the disguise, the reason they, but also, like, the Baroness, why she keeps talking about, of like, oh, how could you be dressed like this? How funny, how silly, is because they are viewing people who are Jewish in such a condescending, prejudiced manner. That they're like, oh, we have to justify it over and over again, because how could someone ever want to be dressed in this way? Like, somehow recognizing that people are being mistreated for being Jewish on a systematic level, that they are, like, how could they ever want to be viewed in that way? It just is belying the fact that this is inherently discriminatory, the way it is being talked about. Just the concept of the aristocrats understanding fatigue and suffering is laughable. Exactly. This is probably the first time they have ever experienced anything like this. And so, like, Marguerite being like, this is the first time that I haven't had a good night's sleep for 3 nights straight. That's like, what do you think it is to be in the working class? The people, the revolutionaries at this time that, like, you betrayed. Armand Saint-Just and the other fugitives were eagerly awaiting the advent of their brave rescuer. He would not stay to hear the expressions of their gratitude, but found the way to his private cabin as quickly as he could, leaving Marguerite quite happy in the arms of her brother. What? See, not ever really knowing, like, who is doing what and who is speaking, that also is just, like, poor writing. Everything on board the Daydream was fitted with that exquisite luxury so dear to Sir Percy Blakeney's heart. Oh, lovely. And by the time they all landed at Dover, he had found time to get into some of the sumptuous clothes which he loved, and of which he always kept a supply on board his yacht. I keep saying this, but, like, you know what would have helped the aristocrats even more? Saving them, if that was your true intent. Because you are, like, putting yourself in danger to be saving them, supposedly, with all these endless resources and free time. It's like, if you actually maybe sold some of your sumptuous clothing, maybe sold your fucking yacht, and distributed it, and told the other aristocrats to do that, that would save their lives. Then people wouldn't resort to these tactics. But, of course, they're wanting to maintain this hierarchy without sacrificing anything, and view themselves as the victims. The difficulty was to provide Marguerite with a pair of shoes, and great was the little middy's joy. Little middies? What? Is that a common term? I don't think I've ever come across that. I mean, I did when I originally read this, apparently. When my lady found that she could put foot on English shore in his best pair. Little middies? What does that even mean? Is that a discriminatory term for someone with dwarfism? I'm gonna look that up after I'm done reading this. The rest is silence. Silence and joy. I mean, if only you could end there. Also, lifting that from Shakespeare, this is certainly not Shakespeare. Shakespeare was full of his own anti-Semitic tropes and, like, prejudice, discriminatory language, but, like, this is certainly nothing close to that. Silence and joy for those who had endured so much suffering, yet found at last a great and lasting happiness. You couldn't even use different language without using last within the same clause twice. But it is on record that at the brilliant wedding of Sir Andrew Ffoulke and Mademoiselle Suzanne de Ternay de Brasserguive, a function at which
His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales and all the elite of fashionable society were present. The most beautiful woman there was unquestionably Lady Blakeney.
Okay. Not the bride.
Whilst the clothes Sir Percy Blakeney wore were the talk of the jeunesse dorée of London for many days.
Kate, that's impolite, you douchebags.
It's also a fact that Monsieur Chauvelin, the accredited agent of the French Republican government, was not present at that or any other social function in London after that memorable evening of Lord Grenville's ball.
That's the end. That's the end? You think Chauvelin even wanted to be there to begin with as a revolutionary? He's like, I have to be around these shitheads, these people who think they're so much better than everyone else. Okay.
The fact that they're like, oh, and they were so fashionable that, like, people couldn't stop talking about it. More than the married couple.
It's like, okay. How about dial it back? Even just for a day, but they can't even do that.
Ew, I hated that.
I'm not going through that exercise ever again of reading something to deconstruct in that way. Unless we're doing it to, like, really make fun of it. I don't know. That was really hard to stomach. Sorry to subject you all to that. I regret that heartily. Midi seems to be in attire. Thank you, Tan. Yeah, I'm gonna also look it up. Oh, so it looks specifically like a sailor's outfit. That fan. I know. I got this online because I'm very pretentious about the fans that I get. You know, there are plenty that are sold at like at like pride events and stuff that are just like pretty shitty. And I'm like, okay, I need something that can actually withstand some of the queer applause because I want to do that. Did the Baroness make the book around 1818? Oh, interesting. Etymology checks it out as women's blouse back then. She made it around the 1920s. Oh, first published in 1905. But she is trying to place it in the year 1792. So I guess she did a little bit of research, perhaps. 1911, it became sailor's men attire. Oh, thank you, Tan. This is very helpful. Yeah, okay. So also, maybe it was like a role of some sort. Honestly, I have been wanting to have like a subscription to the Oxford English Dictionary. That is such an nerdy thing. Because it helps like talk about like the history of words a lot, but it also is like a very colonized elitist institution. So fans need to be clackable without imploding. Agreed. And also not just like the paper fans that are just like you have to like crank them open and then you're like, "Oh, this is I don't know if this will go back." Edom Online for the win. I don't even think I knew that existed. This is amazing. Thank you. Online Etymology Dictionary. This is its own OED. Not being Oxford, though. Okay. I'm going to bookmark this. Thank you very much, Tan. You know, I just like am endlessly grateful for having an audience of people who are very smart. Okay, adding to my bookmarks. Thank you very much. Slightly off topic, but the etymology of hashish is pretty interesting. I would imagine so, because it does come from, um, yeah, Arabic, right? There you go. Let's look at this. Fun exercise to be looking at, to be going through. Also, hashish, 1590s from Arabic hashish, powdered hemp, extended from sense, herbage, dry herb, rough grass, hay. Its earliest record as a nickname for cannabis drug is in 13th century Arabic. Its earliest, in English, is in a traveler's report from Egypt in 1598. It is rare in English until the 19th century. The word form in English today dates from the early 19th century. The word entered all the bigger Western European languages in the early mid-19th century. If you don't count occasional mentions in travelers' reports before then. Interesting. So before, probably it was accepted, universally co-opted, and commodified by Western European powers, probably. That's usually how that goes. It can't just be like occasional travelers. They aren't capitalist enough to be viewed as valid. Interesting. Okay, so there's that with the Scarlet Pimpernel. Sorry. Sorry to put you all through that. Ugh, man. But, if you want to have a quick little discussion, what did you all think? Were you as repelled by it as I was? Did you feel like there was anything beneficial in going through this exercise? I'm thinking of assassin, which derives from the Old Arabic hashish. Really? I didn't know that. I did know that assassin, like as we've come to know it now, it was popularized by Shakespeare. French assassini. Oh yeah, from Arabic, an Arabic nickname. Uh-huh. Yeah, usually that makes sense when there are things that are like coming from other places. It's usually in relation to colonizing, or else they're saying the Crusades. Interesting. Yeah, I think one of the first instances of it was, and I can't remember which Shakespeare play it is, but anyone that has played Assassin's Creed is that. I've never played Assassin's Creed. I mean, I haven't played many games, but from what it sounds like, there's some interesting storylines there. Is it, does it have like a colonizer sentiment to it? I mean, also if it's doing some education, that's good if Assassin's Creed is doing that. Okay. So that was a Scarlet Pimpernel. We will start reading uh the Communist Manifesto tomorrow. I am going to read a little bit of the intro to this particular edition that it's printed in, but before we get into that, I did want to watch this, so we get a little bit of lightheartedness, a little ha 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 ha, before, or as Sir Percy would say, according to my version, this video that I found called Overdramatic Indian Soap Opera Compilation. And I am currently trying to do more catching up on lost time with indulging in more Indian art and media. So, there are many things that I will not understand about like some of these shows, but I did want to see what this was all about. Oh, not me. In the games? No, they're great at explaining history. You're always fighting history on those games. Meaning, like, the narrative of what they're saying is history, or that, like, you're fighting, like, a colonizer history in the games. I think that's also, that's an interesting concept. Maybe it's one of the most apt games. I will think about this. Potentially. Also, if you are going to watch me game, quote unquote game, you will have to understand that I am not doing it to show expertise in any way whatsoever. That people will probably be endlessly frustrated with me, but that is the exercise. So that is the warning. You've been warned if we embark on that. Okay. So let's get into this overdramatic Indian soap opera compilation. So I have not seen like many or any really Indian soap operas, which I am wanting to watch more, but I have seen clips of things. So I wonder if I have seen any of these. Have you ever seen the game Disco Elysium before? No. What is that about? I mean, if it's disco, that sounds fun. So we're talking about queer history. Mm-mm. For June, I'm going to be doubling down on queer history and talking about it. So if there are some recommendations, anything people would want to learn more about. I know a little bit ago we were talking about ballroom, like how we were talking about the Jellicle ball for cats, that very inclusive queer approach, particularly centering black people of color, I mean black and queer people of color who are you know, the originators of so much of queer culture, what is known as a mainstream culture, especially now. So, for example, in Assassin's Creed, you're an Indian when the first English American divide. Terrible game, though. History, great. Those games are terribly good at explaining history. As a player, you're always an outsider fighting establishment. That's interesting. Anti-establishment, I can get behind that. It's a dystopian story, so Disco Elysium, game that is pretty heavy on the political themes. Ooh. They're great for many reasons. Interesting. Hello, Zach. Welcome. Also, I didn't give myself enough time today streaming to go over your rant, but I am wanting to do that tomorrow. I'm very interested in this. And also, Linton, that video that you shared as well. Opening link.
In this regard, it's important.
Oh, wait. I have to adjust my audio. Here we go.
To note that Omar Khayyam, who's said to have lived from about 1048 to 1131, the Persian poet, mathematician, and astronomer, was a favored school chum of the notorious mystic Hassan I Sabah, the original old man of the mountain and founder of the Hashishins, or assassins as they are better known. It said that the terms hashish and assassin come from the same root, Hashishin.
Of course you would have this, like,
myth,
ready to go, Zach.
The old man of the mountain,
Thank you.
Hassan I Sabah, would drug young initiates with hashish, and then they would awake in this beautiful...
Yeah, I love that they're bringing up Shiva as well, where it's like a lot of these plants were used in like a very sacred manner, like that what many, especially it's funny, like here in Utah, like hash and like sometimes cannabis was put in like with a festival of colors, you know. That's how that's something that many Mormons do not understand. Like, that's the history.
Beautiful garden surrounded by nymphs with streams.
They're the two people mentioned.
Wine, and they were told they had entered paradise. Then he drug them again and tell them, "Oh, you've seen paradise, and if you follow me, that's where you'll go when you die." Now, this is, of course, the Marco Polo story, and it's a westernized version of something that was probably far, far different taking place. As Dr. Michael Aldrich has noted, that drug employed for initiation into the cult was used to obtain a vision of paradise. It did not nerve them up for slaughter, was not used during their missions, and did not make them crazy. Quite the contrary. It gave them at least a fleeting glimpse of an altogether higher order of existence. If anything, political and religious intrigue, not hashish, caused assassination. And these...
Hello. Yeah. The fact that we even need to talk about that, but yeah, I'm interested in the comments. This guy's knowledge on cannabis is second to none. Amazes me how he remembers all this like he do. Intelligent guy regardless. Cannabis or not, this dude knows his history. Love that. Incredible. Before marijuana became popular in Spain, Spanish used to smoke hashish as a drug. Not normally. We called it hashish chocolate, though. Interesting. Yeah, and a lot of this comes from, like, as we're talking about, like, areas of the Middle East and North Africa and South Asia, that, like, the concept of smoking, like, this is a very old concept. And, like, the fact that we even have, like, the existence of tobacco, that it was stolen from indigenous people in the Americas when they would use it for traditional purposes, whether it was sacred, ceremonial, or just for social reasons. It's like all of this is a result of colonizers being like, that's mine. Violently, by the way. I've had some bomb hash in Barcelona. I've never tried hash. I would be interested in trying it, though. Would be cool. Thank you for sharing. I need to check this out. There is so much great content. I mean, especially with all the playlists that you make, Zach. I need to get on that. Oh my god, I'm trying to find my window again. There we go. I have so many fucking tabs and windows open. I need to fix that. Okay. So, before we get into a little bit of some of the world news of what is happening, briefly, national pig tactics, but also, like, pigs are pigs everywhere, and by pigs, I'm meaning cops, the police. Fuck them, by the way. P.S. So, I wanted to watch this because it will make many references that I don't understand, but I think we owe a lot of reality TV, what we've come to know it as now, to Tiffany New York Pollard, but also to many aspects of like Bollywood and like dramatic Southeast Asian, but particularly like Indian cinema and TV. Okay, I don't know if you've seen any of these, Tan, but let me know. How dare you? That's racist. Okay, it's just me not refreshing, per usual.
ताजी ने जड़ा परी भाभी को थप्पड़
That was so over the top. No! No!
पण माझा तुमच्यावर संशय आहे.
This is so extra. Do you recognize any of these, Tan? Yesterday, if I did stream, the background of my follow noti would be the wedgie pig. Amazing. The classic when you watch your Daisy parent wind up. Oh, you're in danger. The classic single tear. Now it's moved. It's so camp. It is so camp. Hiss. Like the fried, like the deep fried part of it. The whip sounds, like the thunder. So the repetition of the editing. Wow. Oh, I saw this come out today. I started watching it. Of Z-Way. I also saw this. Overly dramatic Indian anime, and it is like an anime version of that first clip that we saw.
तुम एक मच्छर जितनी ताकतवर हो.
お前は大和組
Oh Amazing. Now I need to see the original sources of all of these things. Oh, incredible. Also, like the shattering of the screen. Amazing. I love that. Okay. So, some more positive news that I saw of Palestinian sisters win Earth Prize turning rubble into bricks. And I wanted to show this. This is from TRT World. I mean, they have their own issues, but I think in general tend to be a little more focused on world events that are not covered as much in Western media. So I wanted to give this a watch.
After 2 years.
Oh. No. There we go.
After 2 years of the war on Gaza, more than 60 million tons of rubble have accumulated, creating one of the most severe urban and environmental crises in modern history. Yet, even amid this scale of destruction, local innovation continues to emerge. Two teenage sisters, Tala and Farah Musa, are leading a project called Build Hope. Their idea is simple. The ruins of homes are not the end, but the beginning of reconstruction.
Out of 6,095 participating teams, we advanced in the first stage to become one of top 35 teams in the Earth Prize.
As Gaza continues to face overwhelming amounts of rubble and severe shortages of building materials, this initiative is trying to transform the destruction into becoming a part of the solution. Tala and Farah are developing practical solutions from within difficult conditions, using available resources to create immediate solutions on the ground.
Our project is based on a centralized reconstruction system. The idea is simple and accessible, allowing anyone, anywhere, to benefit from it. We aim to turn the rubble of destroyed homes into a real solution for the problem itself. The building block we are developing is made of 80% recycled rubble combined with locally available materials found in any place, resulting in a new, usable construction brick.
These young Gazans are sending a message of hope to the whole world. Where others saw debris, the Musa sisters saw opportunities. Ashraf Shanan, TRT World, Gaza.
I mean, that's incredible. It's like they shouldn't have to be in this situation to begin with, to be forced to have such ingenuity and be in this kind of devastation. But I mean, on one hand, it's good to talk about the just complete, I mean, as I said, devastation of what's happening to Palestine and to Palestinians, but also focusing on like the very human aspects of like human beings are having to live through this. And when we talk about numbers, that can help provide a scale as to the amount of destruction, but also, and just like human suffering, but also sometimes it can get lost that it's like the reason those numbers even matter is because this is happening to human beings and their humanity, which is constantly being attempted to be stripped away, is needing to be centered at all times. So I wanted to show that of like these youth who are making the best out of this horrible situation, which again, they should not be in to begin with. But I'm glad that they are getting some coverage there. I do often having a conversation with anyone a bit righty. Meaning Seventh Vixen having another beer when talking to people who are right-wing, or hash, or both. I mean, that can help. when Americans say melting pot. Yeah, as if there haven't been like all of these other cultures and like examples of colonization previously. But that also is part of like the American exceptionalism of like, oh, we're a melting pot, we're great, but then also not wanting any diversity. How bombing of Tyre. Yeah, I think especially when it comes to the colonized West, like these Western powers, where there is this idea of like, oh, history begins with us. Like in the West, people tend to be like, oh, it started with the Greeks. It's like, oh, you mean just like an empire that's white? That's what you're viewing as the beginning of history? So, okay. Getting to more news that is not being really talked about right now. I did want to focus on this, that these Ebola outbreaks in Uganda and the DRC, how important it is to be focusing on the devastating impacts of all of these like disease monitoring mechanisms that were stripped by the US and other Western powers, and how the aspect of like these CIA, these like government operations to have control over people and the lands that they're living in, to subject them to constant exploitation, to keep them under the thumb of these colonial powers to justify extraction and cheap human labor, slave labor, and how now we are seeing these devastating impacts that like this doesn't mean that there is a justification for these like CIA, like these government operations to impose control, but that there is like this is a natural result of stripping away these programs, and that like these programs shouldn't have to exist to begin with because of the colonial extraction that and just like devastation that has happened to these people and the land in order to justify colonial empires.
It is the deadliest Ebola outbreak in the DRC in the past decade.
Oh, I keep forgetting to do this. Like videos if I've had them up for a day.
It is the deadliest Ebola outbreak in the DRC in the past decades.
Whoops.
And the 17th to hit the country since the virus was first detected in 1976. Since May 15th, over 1,000 cases have been reported. The World Health Organization has triggered an international health alert, but the true scale of the outbreak is not yet known. And now, the WHO chief Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus is at the new Ebola treatment facility in Bunia, the capital of Ituri province in northeastern DRC, and the epicenter of the outbreak.
Because of many factors, the virus was circulating undetected. So we have number of cases which is much higher than previous outbreaks before even it was detected. So that makes it complex.
The highly contagious hemorrhagic fever is already present in 3 eastern DRC provinces and in neighboring Uganda. Hospitals are overwhelmed with patients waiting
Spanish
to be
politician.
treated.
We were really demoralized because we knew that at some point...
Just like the classic, I mean, using disease as a weapon of war, like this has been a consistent thing, but especially by Western powers, like in the example that you're giving, but also like to the example of disease outbreak that was happening with smallpox, like smallpox blankets that were given to indigenous people by colonizers to justify their genocide, of like always this bad faith portrayal of generosity or bad faith generosity to justify colonial extraction and genocide, ethnic cleansing, that it's like that has been a concept for a long time.
We were going to die. That was it. Being separated from family and from the environment, I'm telling you, if you've never been isolated, you'll not know how hard it is.
The virus can spread to humans from infected animals, and then from person to person through contact with bodily fluids or from contaminated surfaces. No vaccine or approved treatment is available against the current strain of the virus.
Everyone should take care of himself or herself and take care of each other as well. By doing that, we can stop this outbreak as soon as possible.
And with the arrival of international help, hope still remains for millions of Congolese until a possible treatment or vaccine is developed. Pinar Nishasta, TRT World.
Okay, so just to, well, I did want to get around to the Communist Manifesto, obviously. But before we do that, I did want to show, I know people have been talking about this a lot in the US of what's happening in Delaney Hall, that like this is not something that has just been happening. This has been a continuing situation with all of these concentration camps that are being built in the US that are being used to kidnap and traffic human beings to justify white supremacist, Christian nationalist, ethnic cleansing. And it is just disgusting and deplorable, the conditions that people are put in. And I wanted to highlight this particular situation just as we're talking about fighting the pigs, and how like this is an example of neoliberal fascism. Like as like Zach the other day, I know Zach, you talk about liberals on your stream consistently, but like how you got into it with one of those liberals of talking about how like these tactics are like, even if they don't appear to be the same, like they're ultimately trying to have the same end result. So I wanted to show this of the New Jersey governor, Mikey Sherrill. It was heralded her win to being the governor as like, oh, this is a win against MAGA. No, it's not. It's like, what kind of representation are we getting in? Because the people who are just saying vote blue no matter who, meaning Democrats, like that's not the answer. It's still part of the other side of this fascist coin, where they are part of the police state. Like the governor is like the top cop of the state. So like we need to be looking at it as that concept. And unless there are very serious changes that are happening to the system, this will continue. That often, like as we were discussing yesterday, like something you brought up, Linton, is that like it doesn't matter like who you're putting in these positions of power if like the structures themselves are rotten and are encouraging people to abuse their power. That like even if they go in with good intentions, that like they are, it is hard to act in an ethical manner when the systems themselves are inherently unethical and anti-human. So she is under fire because she is like, oh, we're going to have the New Jersey police be, or Newark police in New Jersey, help create a perimeter. But guess what? Pigs doing pig shit. They were brutalizing protesters instead of being on the side of protesters. So, like, just because you have someone who is like, oh, I'm not MAGA, that doesn't mean they aren't going to act in the same way, or they aren't going to take on any substantial amount of risk to say, like, the cops shouldn't be doing this. Like, actually, like, taking responsibility for this behavior and how it's just perpetuating the same issues. You get the position and realize there is little you can do. Yeah, exactly. And like, I think the writing has been on the wall with Mikey Sherrill for a number of issues that like many of us who are actually leftists have been saying of like, it's not just about voting in a Democrat, because guess what? Joe Biden was a Democrat and he was called Genocide Joe for a reason. You know, it's like, this is why we have to highlight like the systems themselves being inherently destructive and anti-human.
Let me be clear.
Oh, I probably need to refresh this. I'm gonna get ahead of that shit.
Let me be clear. Violent, chaotic clashes hurt everyone. They put the lives of both protesters and law enforcement in danger.
This is something that like all government officials feel compelled to say, like, oh, we can't incite violence of any sort. Okay, but guess what? You already are on the side of state violence. Whether it is happening in front of a camera or not, like, it's happening all the same because of the conditions that the state imposes on people, particularly those who are marginalized. Like, marginalization is a form of violence. Poverty is a form of violence. Criminalizing people just existing by like putting them in these centers to begin with is a form of violence. So like, who are we protecting? What are we defining as violence? Because it seems to me, and many of us on the left who are actually on the left, that this is enabling endless violence of the state that isn't viewed as violence because it's state sanctioned, rather actually protecting human beings. So this is just a continuation of the conversation that we were talking about earlier with pride and how there are people who are supposedly allies, liberal allies that want to like go to pride and like dance around and invade queer spaces, but not actually understand that like the concept of pride that we have today is because of a riot, that people were throwing bricks at cops because they were tired of being brutalized by the cops, by the systems that they protect, because cops don't protect people.
They take the focus away from people inside Delaney Hall and their families. And they raise the temperature with ICE. I will ensure public safety, and I refuse to give ICE an excuse to surge into our communities. That would make the situation more dangerous and put more New Jerseyans at risk. It's time to bring the temperature down. To protect public safety, the area around Delaney Hall has been secured, and the city of Newark issued a curfew there last night. I'm grateful to Mayor Baraka for his leadership in taking this important step. The curfew will be in effect from 9 p.m. until 6 a.m. every night until further notice, and it will extend a half mile in each direction around the facility, so geolocated to the facility. Again, to be clear, we've set out to do three things here: to protect everyone's First Amendment rights to protest peacefully, to prevent ICE from surging into our communities and putting New Jerseyans at risk, and to ensure that people held at Delaney Hall are treated with dignity and according to our Constitution. We're making progress. ICE is behind the facility's gate and not on our streets. And we're maintaining our laser focus on pushing for better conditions and transparency. Today, I'm announcing that the Department of Homeland Security has agreed to restore family visitations starting today at noon. If you have questions about seeing your family members, contact the facility directly.
Which, even though they said that shit, families who are on the ground, who are actually trying to see their family members, have said that that hasn't happened. So, like, you can't just trust that this is going to happen. Like, oh, you were able to negotiate that? Okay. And for, like, people who are liberal a lot of the time, they're like, oh, that sounds good. She's actually trying. That they want to justify their politics in having someone like her in power who is technically blue or whatever the fuck that means, instead of analyzing actions. So like, yeah, let's look at some of these comments. You know very well Trump called and said, fix this or I'll send more federal agents. Changed her tune. I mean, she hasn't even really, because she was saying before, like, oh, people need to be peaceful. Are you afraid of the truth being exposed? ICE is on the streets. If she took her tail there she would see, I don't like her. Yeah, exactly. She's useless. It's time to stand up. Pretty words while she does nothing. Stop talking and do your job. If you would have stopped these people on day one, you wouldn't have to have this conversation. This mayor and governor are lost and have failed their community. Yeah, what can you expect from liberals? She needs to resign. Throwing bricks at ICE is not free speech. Okay. This. Ew. That makes me so mad. It's not? Oh, so, like, they're allowed to get away with whatever behavior? It's always the people who are never at risk of experiencing these tactics, that are never on the side of actively being brutalized, that they are so high and mighty with their tactics and being like, oh, you can't do that. You can't bring weapons here. You can't do this. That's like, okay, have you personally experienced police brutality? Have you personally been harassed by police? Well, guess what? I have. Guess what? That helps keeps us safe when they are afraid of us, not when they are actively seeing all of these different tactics to continue this power imbalance that they already have. Ugh, this makes me so mad. Anyway, the more I know, the more I just think people should leave the sinking boat. I mean, depending on like what you even mean by like leave the sinking boat of like just politics in general, leave the US. It's hard because like there are many people like who are on the right that say like, oh, if you don't like it here, you should leave. But they're the ones actively taking away our documentation, like trans people and like immigrants, like especially people who like depending on documentation status, which already is like so racially charged and discriminatory that like the process moves much slower for people who are considered non-white, that it already is this form of violence where they're like, oh, you can't stay here and you can't leave. So the answer is that you don't exist. Like that's how you know that it is fascist. And also having these people in power who aren't able to actually see that and see that the system already is inflicting all sorts of violence. That like just because ICE is very out like the Gestapo now doesn't mean that they weren't using Gestapo tactics before this. There were still detainment centers that existed before this. That the Biden administration very proudly said that they deported more people than the Trump administration. That just goes to show like the Trump administration, they're intent on like the overt, very visible violence, but that like the violence of mass deportations cannot be understated. Mass deportations in general are hallmarks of fascism and hallmarks of a lot of violence that are targeted specifically on a racialized basis. So, to the people who are saying happy Pride, if you don't think certain tactics in fighting pigs are acceptable, I invite you to be on the front lines of what it means to be receiving their brutality, and then you might change your tune. Happy Pride! That's what I have to say. I'm just like so tired, and I know many people are, of like seeing people, especially liberals, that are like, oh, what are you doing for Pride? Like, I mean, speaking for me personally, like being a queer person, people who like think of themselves as allies, and they're like, oh, how are you doing? But then if you're honest about like, oh, it's shitty being a trans person in the US, particularly in like conservative areas, that you're like, oh, we're angry. And like, it should be about being angry. And they're like, oh, okay. But like, are you doing anything for fun? Because they like don't want to hear about marginalization. And, they also are like, oh, can I join you with something? And it's like, you can't be mad at people when they are resisting oppressors in the ways that are actually effective. Like, if you are being oppressed in this way, then like maybe you can have an opinion that is being listened to. But if not, like, shut the fuck up. Because like, we don't need your quote unquote allyship if you are not willing to take on some fucking risk and actually see the unending violence of the state. That like, imagine the queer people now who are also undocumented, that the system intentionally is trying to keep people undocumented because bureaucracy is a form of oppression. And so how like all of these other intersections of marginalization, that's like, what do you think though, like what people are experiencing when they are some of the most marginalized, like what their experiences are with cops? Like, you can't dictate to them like how to overthrow oppressors, how to resist this kind of oppression, unless you are personally experiencing it. That's my take. It's getting me heated. I know some people can't leave. Yeah, I know. And that's like, honestly, it's like when people are trying to leave, like that is helpful. But like, even from like my perspective, like I've been trying to leave the US, like to be honest. Like I have family in Denmark, like I'm Danish, and I've been trying to apply for jobs like outside of the US, applying for jobs in the US, not hearing back from because of this fascist moment, being multiracial and such, and not experiencing as much marginalization as what some other people do, but like for a good reason. People are not really wanting Americans around, you know? And like, I don't blame people. Like, I understand that with all of this bullshit in American policy and this overt fascism and warmongering that's happening, all this imperialist violence, but also like understanding that like I can understand that. I know where people are coming from there, but it doesn't make it any easier in trying to like get to other places that are safer. Even through some of these programs that are like, oh, this is helping queer people and stuff. Like, it's not always that easy, but stay in and fight. Yeah, it's like, so if you aren't able to leave, which many of us are not able to, like, then what are your options? Do you just like lay down and take it? Or do you like resist? And like, we can't be judgmental, especially the people who have a lot of privilege, about various resistance tactics that historically work, but they don't want to recognize that. Like, okay, Jessica, you actually are able to enjoy being in this queer bar during Pride, having a place to dance where there's actually good music and taste because people were throwing bricks at cops. Hello. That's my take. I know there's so many people on the left that have just like had it with liberals, and like I know I have to keep in perspective that like growing up in a very like colonized mindset, like white supremacist religion, that there's a lot of deconstruction for people to do. But also when people are like grown-ass adults and they aren't willing to like check their privilege and actually like listen occasionally, like we don't have time for that. And especially people who are on the left that are like constantly belittling anarchists, especially, that it's like, who do you think is on like some of the front lines of like helping to support rights? It's people who are involved in labor, people like unionizing, people who are involved in like anarchist ideology, that it's like true leftists are on the front lines of protecting everyone's rights. There have been like segregated and very like bigoted leftist movements as well, or like factions within leftism that like have to be confronted as well. That like capitalism isn't like racism and like misogyny, all of these things of discrimination will not go away with capitalism, but that like capitalism upholds a lot of this or perpetuates a lot of it. Okay. I did want to read this first part of the Communist Manifesto. So, after my rant, I'm sweaty now. past year, US has had negative growth. Yeah, exactly. Because we don't have immigrants. And this is why they have these hysterics over a declining white birth rate. And this is usually what fascists are harping about. Like, oh, but white birth rate. It's like, okay, well, you all like steal your culture anyway, steal culture and like taste anyway. So like, I don't know. It's tiring, but like, that's even coming from me, who often is like assumed to be white, like white passing, having like proximity to like cisness with being non-binary, or like presenting as more femme sometimes, that it's like, I'm not even experiencing what a lot of people are experiencing who are more marginalized. Okay, so this is the editor's note for the Communist Manifesto by Bob Blaisdell. I don't know. Armand will help us. Armand, like in, is this someone in Spain, or are you referring to the brother in the Scarlet Pimpernel? This is also showing probably my horrible American education. So sorry if that's the case. Okay. That one. Oh, the one in the Scarlet Pimpernel?
Yeah. If only he can save us. If only the Scarlet Pimpernel can save us.
Okay. So, getting into the editor's note, our introduction briefly to the Communist Manifesto that we will be reading. Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels' Communist Manifesto, published in 1848, though chronologically almost equidistant between the French Revolution of 1789 and the Russian Revolution of 1917, is the document that links the two most earth-shaking revolutions in history. Like, so already we're kind of coming from like this Western colonized perspective. But again, the Communist Manifesto was written within that perspective as well, which is why we need to talk about it from a decolonized lens. My Texan bestie is anarchist, but I try not to hate her. It's like, I mean, and like there is so much diversity within like anarchist thought as well. So like just trying to paint anarchists as wanting to burn the world down, I think is oversimplified and reductive and co-opted a lot of the time by these power structures and people in power to be like, you can't trust them, when like there are many anarchist tactics that are effective. So like holding some nuance there as well. In it, Marx and Engels looked back to the French Revolution and analyzed their own Europe, about to boil over into revolution, in order to look forward. Later, Trotsky and Lenin, the most important Russian revolutionaries of 1905 and 1917, sometimes saw themselves fulfilling the prophecies of what had become socialism's most holy document. For more than 150 years, the Communist Manifesto has influenced our sense of history and helped promote social justice. The philosopher Karl Popper, poppers, you say? Happy Pride. Anyway, mixing poppers and Marx. Pride indeed. Though critical of many aspects of Marxism, recognizes Marx's contribution not only to ideas but to deeds. Quote, "One cannot do justice to Marx without recognizing his sincerity. His open-mindedness, his sense of facts, his distrust of verbiage, and especially of moralizing verbiage, made him one of the world's most influential fighters against hypocrisy and Phariseeism. He had a burning desire to help the oppressed, and was fully conscious of the need for proving himself in deeds and not only in words." I mean, also talking about people as Pharisees, that's a very Christian perspective to like justify anti-Semitism in many ways. So like calling that out. His many talents being theoretical, he devoted immense labor to forgiving what he believed to be scientific weapons for the fight to improve the lot of the vast majority of men. His sincerity in his search for truth and his intellectual honesty distinguish him, I believe, from many of his followers. Idealism about human nature and hopefulness for social progress, less than any one ideology, characterize these 36 selections that begin with Rousseau's spirited analysis of social inequality in the discourse on the origins and foundations of inequality among men, which we read at before we were reading the Scarlet Pimpernel. And continue through the Charter 77 Manifesto of 1977. Necessarily, these selections are only a few of the few thousands of eruptions from mountains of materials. All are famous and passionate outpourings by revolutionaries or revolutionary thinkers. Even though in their time the ideas and the revolutionaries were at odds with each other, or became so, sometimes to their own cause's destruction. Quote, the men who rush into undertakings of vast change usually feel they are in possession of some irresistible power, observed Eric Hoffer. The generation that made the French Revolution had an extravagant conception of the omnipotence of man's reason and the boundless range of his intelligence. Lenin and Bolsheviks, who plunged recklessly into the chaos of the creation of a new world, had blind faith in the omnipotence of Marxist doctrine. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say blind. The greatest analyst of the ideas in history that created the French Revolution, Alexis de Tocqueville, simultaneously complicates and clarifies our understanding of social upheaval. Quote, it is not always when things are going from bad to worse that revolutions break out. On the contrary, it oftener happens that when a people which has been put up with an oppressive rule over a long period without protest suddenly finds the government relaxing its pressure, it takes up arms against it. Thus, the social order overthrown by a revolution is almost always better than the one immediately preceding it. And experience teaches us that, generally speaking, the most perilous moment for bad government is one when it seeks to mend its ways. Only consummate statecraft can enable a king to save his throne when, after a long spell of oppressive rule, he sets to improving the lot of his subjects. Patiently endured so long as it seemed beyond redress, a grievance comes to appear intolerable once the possibility of removing it crosses men's minds. So essentially just kind of like confronting the fact that when people have been oppressed for such a long time, that until they see an example of what life looks like outside of that oppression, that that's when it makes people very angry. So like an example of something that we're seeing in the US is like all of this very blatant fascism that is happening with all of these policies with the Trump administration and all of their cronies who are put in charge. But an example of having a little more leftism, maybe like leftish type of policies that like what's happening in New York City with Zohran Mamdani as the mayor. That doesn't mean that he's always like leftist, to be clear. But actually seeing someone who is in a position of power try to engage in bettering some people's circumstances from a material perspective, that people become even angrier, where they're like, oh, so even though this system is horrible and corrupt, and we know that a lot of things won't change and can't change, there are some people that when they have the political will to actually change some things, they can. That doesn't mean it changes the whole circumstance that we are all experiencing, but it provides this materialist position that justifies leftish, sometimes like ideology. Okay. Tocqueville's short book, L'Ancien Régime et la Révolution, published in 1856, contains more solid and incontrovertible historical criticism than hundreds of volumes of later date, writes an outstanding Italian historian of the French Revolution, Gaetano Salvemini. As wonderful as l'Ancien Régime et la Révolution is, there is no end of analyses and histories of revolution and no shortage of biographies of the men and women who have stood at the forefront of revolution. Okay, so that is the intro to this particular edition of the Communist Manifesto and other writings, other revolutionary writings. So I want to continue providing more context to the Communist Manifesto, the circumstances that actually led to it. So we will get into that tomorrow. I think it will also lend itself very well as we are continuing with The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison for Banned Book Club, and talking about how a lot of these structures play into the idea, you know, like these capitalist structures just exacerbate a lot of racism and sexism, queerphobia, ableism, just all of these forms of bigotry and discrimination that we see coming from a perspective of commodifying human beings, that like the ultimate commodification of human beings is slavery, that these racialized structures come from the concept of slavery and colonization, that as we deconstruct this, we can get to the heart of what she is saying. So there we go. Tomorrow, for The Bluest Eye, we are actually going to get to page 32 in this edition, what we have been working up to for a long time. So I have some things planned. It is truly a treat to read her work, a privilege, because, I mean, like, there have been some people that have criticized her, like relationships with some upper class bourgeois people, but also being like thrown into the public eye in that way. I think it's difficult to, and like in these types of circles where it's difficult to even like not have kinds of relationships like that. But I mean, not to justify all of that, I think many people try to use that as a way to oversimplify the profundity of her writing. So we'll engage with that. I'll show some like analyses that I've greatly enjoyed and I think are very important for this particular section of The Bluest Eye. So there you go. We are going to page 32. If you are interested in joining, we can engage in some discussion. There's this old cartoon still. The righties are like, a lot divides us, but something unites us. Money. Lefties, a lot divides us. Beaver's thoughts. But something unites us. Well, let's see who wins. Yeah. We'll see. You would hope that it would be like shared sense of humanity, seeing each other's humanity, but you know, this is why we have to always talk about us protecting ourselves, organizing, engaging in labor, engaging in decolonizing our minds to therefore decolonize from a materialist perspective. That, like, as we're talking about, like, idealism, the idealism of the Communist Manifesto, that, like, we have to call out when some idealism has failed, when it has not been based in reality more and pragmatism in some revolutionary movements, but also that in order to change the world, we do need to have some sense of a better world existing. So trying to balance those things. Revolutionary optimism with realism and the structures that we're up against. Page 332. Yeah, page 32. So we got to page 21, at least in this edition. But yes, if you're interested in reading, we'll continue more with local news just to catch up on some stuff that's happening in Utah with these data centers, plural, because that's a thing. Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Not So Wonderful of Shark Tank idiocy, is like doubling down on all of its claims because now representatives in Utah, they're like, we don't like the bad publicity. We want to be liked, because it's very Mormon. So Americans should just stop hating the word socialism, I guess. Yeah, that Americans hating the word socialism is directly from the Red Scare and how there is this McCarthyism of, like, especially boomers in their generation, all of this propaganda to be like, oh no, communism, socialism, this is bad. And meanwhile, they are like directly advocating for fascism a lot of the time. So yeah, and we are seeing that especially younger generations are talking about all of this and like, no, that's not what this means. We actually have to talk about history. Imagine that. And talk about it in a way that is productive, that is not just fear mongering, but we are constantly battling all of these various factions of what it means to be resisting effectively, especially when it comes to white people, no offense, white cishet people, like centering themselves in all of these spaces and not like shutting the fuck up and learning how to listen sometimes. So with it being Pride Month, now is a great time to learn this. Anyway, that's going to be it for me today. That was a lot, but there you go. Happy Pride. Joy is an act of resistance, but you know what also is resistance? Not being subservient to the fascist state and resisting the pigs. So there we go. All right. Thank you for being here. It was great chatting with you all. Tomorrow we will get to more of the videos that we did not get to today. But I hope you have a good rest of your day, evening, wherever you are. And I will see you soon. Okay, bye.